Even though I had been making fun of my wealthy wife, I never thought she could truly sense what I was thinking. About 18 months ago, she complied with her late grandfather's final request by doing it behind her back every single day. Shortly after our wedding, she received a strange proposal from the man she had been engaged to since childhood. We would split up after a year of our union when she went live with her long-deceased first love. But when her ex-boyfriend Kai discovered our union, his rage compelled him to flee the nation with a powerful and overwhelming beauty. Having landed such a rich husband, I decided to gain her love. Despite my best attempts, fate took yet another surprising turn when I was less than 6. When Aurora's grandfather passed away a few months after we were married, she immediately contacted Aurora, who usually maintained her composure, was pleading with him to return home. The distant air suddenly burst into a joyful, sensual dance. As her chauffeur, I had to witness this in the hallway. When I first saw Kai at the airport, he was a slender man with an entrancing performance. I was immediately put off by a pale young man with delicate features who was a visage. Damon retrieves Kai's bag, which Aurora requested in her distinctive clipped style. I was accustomed to obeying her orders in silence, so I loaded the bag in our premium S680 with its suitcase in the trunk. Using cutting-edge suspension and all of my abilities, I was able to establish a scenario. In the rear seat, Aurora and Kai were able to talk uninterrupted. Aurora said to Kai during this, "I've been away from you for the past year since our relationship has only been platonic. I've been waiting for you to come back, so you may definitely won my heart." Her typically cold exterior had vanished, and she suddenly seemed cozy and friendly. But as I drove along the airport roadway, a nagging sensation tore at me. Kai answered, "Aurora, I know now that I misinterpreted you, but don't worry. I'll make you pleased going forward." The car's perfect soundproofing amplified their quiet whispers, which I couldn't help but hear. However, I believe they should at least wait to have sex until I no longer hold the legal husband title. Such closeness, complaining to myself about how ridiculous everything was, and increased speed to pass a slow-moving car in the fast lane. I tried a right turn in my S, a quiet vexation since a moving car was blocking my path. At that moment, there was an electric car with a green license plate that was being passed by without any indication. Abruptly, combined from the far right, and the two vehicles struck each other as I recovered control of my car. The electric car's driver mysteriously pressed the accelerator. My head started to spin, and everything turned violently after that. When I eventually recovered consciousness, I was in the driver's seat. Imprisoned in the Kai was standing a few meters away from the wreckage, and no matter how hard I tried, I was unable to free her. Fortunately, traffic cops eventually arrived and assisted in removing us from the wrecked vehicle. After a comprehensive medical examination, I realized that it was the result of my failure to see the flash warning. We came to the understanding that none of the three of us had been hurt. I was shocked to learn that she makes well over $4 billion annually. Even though her company and stocks weren't directly mined. Legally, we divided revenues as marital property, and with such a large sum of money at stake, I stood to gain at least $2 billion. Why should I continue to be her doormat? The market may be down, but it's the bank's massive deposit, still produced over 4% interest, or a staggering $80 million per year. Mentally calculating the figures, I grinned and thought, "Aurora, please hurry up and finalize our divorce and move to a vast nation of 200,000 square meters after I receive that $2 billion settlement. Estate, and even maintain a $10,000 monthly allowance for a college student." Aurora sensed, without my knowledge, that I was deep in my inner monologue. I glared at her, saying, "I'm your legal husband, Aurora, and you're not going to cozy up with me." I secretly yelled at Kai on my account, telling him to stop it immediately and throw away the money. Aside from the fact that Kai isn't exactly a saint, he rushed into me with a black cart that was stained. Pushed your grandfather too hard in his hospital room, causing a terrible hemorrhage. But if I disclose that, at the precise moment Kai approached Aurora, you will accuse me of defamation. He tried to put his arm around her shoulders, but she pushed it away. She would run to his aid as he lost his equilibrium and fell normally. She said, with concern, but now with a raised eyebrow and a playful smile, "You're correct. I'll act appropriately because I'm married." Then she called for an ambulance to transport Kai to the hospital and told her helper to go with him. The situation left Kai and me stunned. As the event deviated from the script, I thought, "Silence, what in the world is happening?" Later, while Aurora and I drove home in a different vehicle, I had a vision that I couldn't make up with. Given the abrupt shift in her behavior, I questioned whether Aurora had a mental illness. Wounded in the accident, she and Kai could never be together as long as I'm around, so why has she? I glanced away from the divorce conversation to see Aurora smiling slavishly, and her bright eyes without saying a word. I replied icily, "Are you not overwhelmed?" I continued to pretend that you were overwhelmed. "You're going to see how Kai is doing? If he loses a leg, it might be better if Aurora said nothing at all." Before dismissively claiming it's only a little bruise, she called her assistant. "Come on, let's get," I wondered. "Did she just call me honey? And what's going on here, my prof? Did I not communicate myself clearly, or did my performance fall short of expectations?" I carried on with Kai in that situation, and just seeing him makes me, you won't be his Aurora in the true sense of the word as long as I oppose a divorce. Her sensitive face curled into a sly smile as she said, "Okay, honey, I'll keep away from him without getting a divorce." I was completely confused. Aren't you always? Claiming that once Kai returned, we would part ways. Come on, you're one of the best business people in the country. How can you abandon your commitment you made to divorce me? And as soon as Kay returned with that $2 billion payoff, my thoughts were trying to untangle everything while sweltering, when suddenly a mild aromatic breeze drifted past while Aurora put her arm around mine and asked, "What do you want to do, honey? Do you want to eat supper with me today, or should we go out?" I was shocked when a cunning spirit suddenly took control of my wife. She had just been the picture of distant reserve, and now she was speaking to me so deeply that I questioned whether I was performing well enough and whether I had to reconsider his role as a villain with billions at stake. When we got home, I excused myself because I thought it would provoke the kind of hatred that makes people clench their teeth. Aurora led the maid to make our supper when I went to the restroom. I was soaked to my bones by the freezing water that poured from the shower head. Moments after this abrupt narrative turn, Aurora's voice clarified the misunderstanding. Dark and unforgiving sounds came from outside the door. "Darling, are you there? Normally you wrap up in 5 minutes, but today it's been 40. I must have missed something since that tone made me shiver. I need the clue in order to find out the truth before I die and forfeit that divorce settlement." And the sliding door suddenly flew open, and a thin, fragile hand reached out. Wearing only a white blouse and sheer black, she strode into the toilet in Aurora. Stockings, a mix that was equally alluring and risky, I immediately understood that this was no coincidence. It seemed like a planned trap if I, as the cunning villain, even made a suggestion on whatever I might be banned for. Pressure. It was obvious that she wanted to entice me and then say that I had coerced her, thereby negating my order to maintain my advantage. I claimed the substantial settlement, evoked a dramatic frown, and snapped. "Who's calling? They need to go to bed. Hang up now." But I was secretly thrilled. Kai's name appeared on the screen as the incoming call flashed, and the response was perfectly timed. Aurora paused for 2 seconds before it swiftly left them to their little world as I enjoyed some solitude. Before responding, I could clearly hear Kai's pathetic voice in the quiet restroom. Voice, Aurora, I'm alone in the hospital, and my wound hurts. Completely abandoned, could you please come and keep me company? I confessed in private, but reluctantly admitted that Kai was an expert at using the damsel in distress card. After a short silence, Kai remarked, even though I pied him, I had no intention of letting him meddle further. I apologize for interrupting, Damon, but please go ahead without me, I'll be fine. Even if I get sick tonight, I thought, darkly, Kai has an exceptional ability to evoke that compulsive yonder aura, making them the ideal fit. It's nearly seamless for my own sinister side, and I loved the idea of Aurora scowled as she drew nearer, her porcelain complexion revealing their genuine affection. My mesmerizing look briefly disarmed me before I could comprehend the unexpected. Intimacy. She crushed her mouth to mine, and my first kiss disappeared in an as soon as I thought, my first kiss is lost, Aurora played the fox. Spirit to perfection, then a dainty finger with a jade tint touched my lips. Aurora took out her phone as she muttered, "Don't talk just yet," and as if her face completely changed, returning to the calm, detached beauty. Everyone anticipated Mr. Nakamura's sharp speech. The hospital has already made arrangements for a caregiver for you, and my spouse and I are currently in the IND, which is disposed of in the restroom. Additionally, if that isn't enough, we can send more. Kai coughed a hard, strangled sound that appeared to indicate his declining health, followed by "It's all my fault, Aurora," he whispered in a strained, desperate tone. "You've gotten so I can withstand any adversity since I don't feel like I'm being punished, but keep in mind that you promised that we would never." Really, I couldn't stop thinking till the skies themselves fell. Aurora, are you truly touched by his passionate and nearly moving words? Unconcerned, continue to care for him. I suddenly moved Aurora's sensitive finger away, and I've had a lot of lovers over the years. So, I've said to keep away from you because I won't be tempted by your antics. Little tricks won't work on me, Aurora, who has a playful twinkle in her eye. Mr. Nakamura, please take care of yourself. My husband and I have many more urgent issues before he could reply. She hung up and stepped forward, her eyes glimmering with, "You declared yourself to be a master of seduction when she challenged you to flirt. We're alone proves it to me." Aurora's abrupt change didn't do anything to deter my resolve. I skillfully and jokingly retorted, "And you closed your eyes. Now let me show you the real art of seduction." Aurora obeyed coy. Grinning, I hurriedly left the restroom to get a change of clothes before rushing. The maid smiled as she met me downstairs. "Young master, you're done taking a shower. Please ask young madam to join us." I nodded and sat down at the dining table with an expression that said, "And dinner can begin." With an emotionless expression, Aurora eventually dropped smoothly in pajama clothes, remarking, "You need to take care of yourself because you've recently lost some weight." The maid, who was obviously surprised by Aurora's changed look, dropped. When I looked at the ornate spread, she looked at me and started to prepare the food. The dishes she prepared included steamed oysters, stir-fried kidney genung with bull's testicles, and chives, sea cucumber delicacies, and stir-fried eggs that almost strangled me. I'm still learning how to channel, so what in the world is all this heavy fare? Are you trying to overwhelm me? With all this pent-up enthusiasm, Aurora really delivered tonight, living up to her reputation as the clever scion of a prosperous dynasty, who was plotting as soon as I entered I was so overwhelmed at home that I only ate the chives egg stir, fry once more. Aurora's enraged, cheeky grin made me. I couldn't stop lying there in the bedroom to isolate myself. I kept replaying her seductive actions in my thoughts, my mind whirling with vivid images. When I opened the door the next morning, I saw her in a variety of seductive positions. As if sleep had escaped her, Aurora stood there with heavy circles under her eyes. I proposed, with a mocking snort, that we go to the hospital to check on Kai's condition. Remember, Kai will be at the charity gala I have to attend tonight. Additionally, I had initially intended to keep them apart, but my cunning mind immediately changed course, and I'll make sure to provide them some alone time. Tonight, Aurora, I will publicly humiliate you and force you to finalize our divorce before me." Aurora stopped, then reminded everyone that you have to. I decided that I would go and crush Kai. Time passed quickly as I arrived at the hotel hosting the charity event. Gala was strangely dressed in athletic clothes, whilst everyone else wore classy suits. And despite my unusual attire in glitzy outfits, almost everyone knew me. Soon after I became Aurora's alleged legal husband, Aurora appeared in complete regalia exuding glitz, and was soon followed by the stunning Kaie. The host said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated for the charity," after a couple who seemed to have been sent from heaven. As the dignitaries were presented, the presenter jovially remarked that the event was about to start. "Raise your hand for an amusing quiz show with prizes tonight. If you provide the right response, we'll donate $10,000 to our charity fund, plus AI assumed there was a perfect chance, but the incorrect response will cost 50,000 won." To degrade Aurora and leave her completely dissatisfied after reading the first question, "What is the world's most costly timepiece?" I raised my hand right away when the host called on me. "Mr. Would you mind responding, Damon?" I grabbed the microphone and yelled, "Wait a minute. The more you wait, the more expensive it gets." The hall was filled with laughter. The host grinned and said, "Wrong answer, you owe $50,000. Before advancing for the following round, Yuen gave Aurora a suggestive look. After the quiz was completed, "What is the largest island in the world?" I gently squeezed Kai's hand as he prepared to boldly offer. I yelled, "Pizza Island," into the spotlight in front of the esteemed crowd, since each piece is its own island. Kai then walked over to Aurora, expressing some displeasure by saying, "Damon, you're acting so vivacious today that you're even blocking other people's turns." I raised an eyebrow at their arguing. The focus abruptly shifted to Kai and Aurora, possibly on purpose. The presenter laughed, but I couldn't tell if it was a coincidence. Miss Aurora and Mr. Damon appeared to be the ideal match at first impression. I would also like to know which river divides the weaver from the cattle herd." Kai put up his hand to respond, but before he could, the girl, in our legend with an elegant smile. Lastly, I used the microphone to interrupt, announcing the River of Shadows. Kai hissed, his eyes narrowing. "Don't you dread ridicule, for Aurora gave such a careless response. Yet she only glanced at, I thought impassively that I would make you both completely embarrassed tonight. And it will be all over the media tomorrow, forcing the board of directors to insist on our divorce for the benefit of the business. Yeah, I will see it through." The room was a hive of activity, as with a 2 billion, I didn't really care that every guest was staring at me and treating me like a circus exhibit. The host's only concern was financial freedom, and a divorce settlement was on the line. He cleared his throat before posing another question. "Now, complete this sentence." Something hurt, something flowed, and nobody dared to respond until everyone's eyes were on. I responded coolly. "Exit the host without any pain," and zipped my jacket up to my chin. "Faltered, Miss Mr. Lee. Please take note of the context," as I joked. I'm not attempting to overshare. I simply know how to get a gathering excited." The host quickly added another 50,000 yen to the total amount donated and continued with yet another ridiculous question. I gave another ridiculous response in return, which caused the audience to go into fits of Aurora laughed. then quickly covered my mouth with her hand and pulled me away. Aurora was obviously concerned that I might go beyond our planned public humiliation halfway through the cocktail party. She suddenly grew adamant and would not allow me to leave her side while I was lingering. How could Kai, the focus of attention, finally get his chance without being able to control his tongue? Kai took over and said, "Aurora, let's retreat to the balcony for a private moment." Aurora gave him a calm look and said, "If Mr. Damon has anything to say, he can express it like this." I believed Aurora was obviously attempting to portray the image of the ideal wife is always calm and in charge, so I need to plan ahead. When they're by themselves, I interrupt to clear my throat. "Maybe Mr. Damon has to talk to you about something urgent, Aurora. Come with me. I know a calmer place." I ushered Aurora gently into a tiny conference room as I guided them there. Kai came after me, and I purposefully left the door open in anticipation of results. Perhaps Aurora chose to get a divorce because she had been acting strangely lately, was no longer tied together. Feelings might become heightened, and I could record the proof I require to seek a divorce. If I can demonstrate her guilt, I may even be able to obtain a bigger settlement. Who knows? Once Kai took over, 3 bills might be within reach. He started making overtures right away, Aurora. You must be aware that my affections for you are burning as constantly as he said, "Stars." Aurora stopped me with an icy, "If you're only here to bring up old memories, then tone down, Mr. Damon." This chat sits beyond the small opening in the door, where I saw Kai realize his romantic. He murmured, "You might not know, since overtures weren't working," and he changed tactics with Aurora. "However, Damon has deceived you by using your funds for other purposes." He then showed people his phone, which was undoubtedly filled with pictures that might be used against him or movies. I wished Kai had more concrete evidence of Damon's adultery, but in actuality, I'm still a virgin and very innocent in that sense, so if Aurora's voice rose abruptly, and I'll take the fall for this one. This divorce is supposed to go well. It's absolutely normal for my spouse, who works under a lot of pressure, to relax at a pub with young models. What's wrong? Kai scowled alongside him, saying, "Look at this video, it's not just Aurora." He even planted a kiss. I thought harshly, what kind of man is that? To one of the females in the VIP lounge. "I'm shocked to hear this, Damon. Isn't it clear that you have nothing? Sincere enough to handle any of this, please divorce me quickly and forget the $4 billion. I heard Aurora say, "Give me back the $2 billion we agreed upon." I could clearly see Kai's face flushing and his eyes widening in rage from the door's crack as soon as I took out my phone and began recording. Kai quickly ran behind Aurora and grabbed a silk scarf from his suit. Aurora's eyes widened in horror as he pushed her mouth and nose against his pocket, pushing her deeper into the room. Despite the weak lighting and my inability to see every part of her face, she attempted to push him away. I thought, darkly, even if this isn't mutual too, I sensed sheer desperation. With $1 billion at stake, I yelled, "Stop!" and exploded. I slammed a quick sidekick into the room, sending Kai flying a meter or so away. Shocked, he muttered, "How did I look at Aurora, who was momentarily stunned?" And then I strode over, and she glared at me as I slapped her, startling her into complete alertness. Clinched, she pointed a finger accusingly at Kai and yelled, "You scoundrel!" Aurora calmly responded, "Daylight, you want to attack a respected woman." It was already late and dark outside when she made her sarcastic remark, which really affected me. Observers gathered the more intelligent among them and humiliated them in a matter of seconds. Swiftly put the pieces together, and soon a number of powerful bystanders surrounded Kai and those I was previously the alleged hero connected to his company, Nakamura Holdings. I felt useless all of a sudden, and a tiny hand quickly grabbed mine and pulled me away. And when I looked down, I saw that it was Aurora's, even though it appeared that she had taken the incorrect drug, and we silently left, her rage evident. I decided not to provoke this woman because I knew she was a ticking time bomb. I tried to soothe her, but even though that smack was really pleasurable, I'm now afraid she would retaliate. I did it myself to save you, and you seemed to love slapping me, didn't you? She snapped. I was briefly stunned to learn that this woman could actually read. I was just thinking about that idea when she brought it up, and I was resolved to keep my cool. Replied, "Take it to court if you have the facts. If not, call the police. There's nothing to be afraid of, as I have provided the evidence and justifications. How can you accuse me when you don't realize how dangerous that was? If I hadn't taken action, you might have lost control." Aurora scowled and shot back, "I was using sleeping pills, not aphrodisiacs, and you were watching the show from the doorway," I thought. "How can you slander me like that?" And stammered, "Are you shocked?" She knows I was spying, and if I confess it, she will destroy me. Continue to be dishonest. There's still hope for a New Year's return home. I stammered as I attempted to clarify. "Listen, I was just inquisitive when I noticed a crack in the door. What transpired, and I used a valiant eagle strike in that split second to save you if you don't value it. I should have just stood back and looked mournful. Looked out the window and moaned to myself, no. I have to keep it together if I start to giggle because my entire strategy is going to fail and my $2 billion are evaporating the appeal of countless college friends and the prospect of a carefree country life." I felt a sense of sadness come over me as I remembered an old poet's words about the limitless potential of sadness made my nose water. When Aurora sensed my distress, her tone softened. "But don't let that discourage you. Since I misinterpreted you, how about I make amends tonight just by mentioning it?" I woke up and exclaimed, "I only need a couple $1 billion. Aurora's eyes brightened after a brief lapse in her glittering smile. "I can provide something far more precious," she assured me. I thought about this woman in silence. Never seems to be direct and isn't one to accept things for free. After washing up, I sneaked into the small guest room later that night and started planning my spectacular escape return. I made a thorough inventory of everything I would need on my phone before leaving the country. Suddenly, a warm, gentle hug rubbed against my skin as a sweet breeze blew in. When I turned around again, Aurora was already modestly dressed in a small bathrobe. "We've been married for so long," she said, enough to conceal but enticing enough to arouse desire. "Long, and our wedding night hasn't yet happened." As her cheek touched my ear, I quickly turned off my phone. "What are you doing on the phone? We're husband and wife. Why make things more complicated?" I objected to violent threats, and Aurora laughed, saying, "If you don't comply, I pushed her away and threatened to sentence you to at least 3 years in prison if she sued you for coercion." She stepped back and sat coolly on the armrest of the sofa, twisting every fact, and asked, "Who do you? Should I trust you or me? I believed I was doomed, and tonight I'll find out. How am I supposed to get a divorce when I've lost all of my dignity?" I was so embarrassed that I clenched my teeth and told myself that a true guy could bend. I'll put up with this degeneration for the time being without cracking, but eventually In retaliation, I'll visit the hospital tomorrow and schedule an infertility surgery, after which I'll have my way, and Aurora will be forced to file for divorce. With that resolve, I accepted a maelstrom of unwanted passion, and the next day, in a desperate attempt to find a solution, I searched the most popular option on the internet for male contraception methods was vasectomy. Although oral contraceptive pills were available, their importation was required. So I enlisted a friend to assist me in obtaining them. Over the next few days, I made every effort to avoid a direct confrontation with Aurora. The medication was ultimately administered half a month later. Aurora had stepped up her efforts and insisted on arriving. I had to turn down her advances 3 times a day for intimate dues. I was going to say no again tonight, but she would eventually get to her. I'm holding on to the medication I planned. 1 pill lasts for 3 months. Will last me 2 years, and if I can keep her from getting pregnant in that time, she'll have to go to a doctor. Exam, after which I would receive the divorce settlement. But just then, a woman's voice yelled out. Aurora looked over and asked, "What are you doing, honey?" I dropped the tablet and leaned down to get it. "Are you looking for something on the ground? Did she delay becoming pregnant?" When I saw the test strip with the 2 red lines, I stopped thinking. I was able to ask Aurora what this race was, and she helped me get up. Told me it was a pregnancy test, and the 2 lines meant you were expecting. I was so astonished that I stepped back. Upon awakening, I realized that the pill had already lost its effectiveness, thereby defeating my goal. Aurora found out she was pregnant the very next day, so I went with her to the pregnancy appointment. We're led into the examination room, and when the results showed that they were normal, I quickly asked the doctor, "Is it?" The doctor scowled at me, saying it was safe to have sex while pregnant. I requested the first 3 months or the last 3 months, so the middle 4 months are mine. Okay, the female doctor reprimanded me severely, despite the fact that your wife is gorgeous and pregnant. What the devil is she doing? Are you feeling both relieved and defeated? I asked Aurora if she had heard that the Aurora pouted. "Oh, well, I won't," when the doctor said it wasn't safe. "Push you, but we'll work out our differences later." I stumbled as I said, "Please." "Listen, I was just walking past when I noticed a crack in the door and became interested. Unintentionally saw what transpired, and if you don't like it, I used a quick eagle strike to save you. Maybe I should have avoided it completely, and I looked downcast. Out the window, believing that I had to keep my composure, or I would explode in the promise of carefree nights with lovely companions has been destroyed, and I have lost my $2 billion in laughing. Oh, the suffering. A wave of sorrow overtook me. That idyllic country existence is over. My eyes began to sting as I recalled the ancient poet's depictions of the boundless depths of heartache. Aurora's voice softened as she said, "All right, don't be upset," almost shedding a tear. "I'm very sad that I didn't understand you. How about I make it right tonight?" I was instantly energized by the potential of reconciliation. "I don't need much," I said, "only a few billion more, and even Aurora's gilded face would falter for a moment before changing into one of light-hearted assurance that I can provide something much more." She said, "Valuable," and her eyes were sparkling. I couldn't help but think about this woman. Never accepts handouts. Instead, she demands something in exchange. When I got home, I went to my small guest room. After giving myself a brief bath, I started writing down my ambitious future plans. I was taking notes on my phone when I noticed a soft, comforting scent permeating the air. I turned around and found a kind, consoling embrace from behind. Aurora was now wearing a short, discreet bathrobe that provided just enough. "We've been married," she mumbled, finding just the right amount of cover to arouse desire. We haven't really commemorated our wedding night on her cheek for a long time. Touched my ear, and I automatically turned off my phone. "What are you doing? Married? Why add physical intimacy to the mix?" I objected. Aurora said, "I'll have grounds to charge you with coercion if you don't cooperate, and it may land you in prison for at least." I pushed her away and said, "You're twisting," for at least 3 years. She took a measured step back, sat down on the couch, and spoke. Coolly, "Who do you think will accept your digressions as fact?" I thought I was doomed, but tonight I'll lose any semblance of dignity. How in the world am I going to obtain a divorce under these circumstances? Situations that I still resolved inside. A true man can adjust to put up with this humiliation for the time being, and tomorrow I will get my retribution. After investigating my possibilities for becoming infertile at the hospital, I would approach Aurora. And with that grim determination, she would be forced to consent to a divorce. I succumbed to the nighttime passion, and the next morning I researched male contraception online. A vasectomy was a typical remedy, although oral medications were also an option. Even though I had to import them, so I asked a buddy to assist me in getting them. And in the days that followed, I discovered every way to avoid Aurora's approaches. And then, over 2 weeks later, the medication arrived since Aurora had developed an obsessive need for 3 times daily intimacy. So I prepared myself for yet. After yet another round of rejections, I thought about whether I could stay away from her for 2 years. She will be made to undergo an examination before the divorce settlement is finalized. I was about to take a tablet when a familiar voice interrupted, "Honey, Aurora, what are you doing?" I jumped, let the pill slide out of my hand, and leaned down to retrieve it. Asked, "Are you looking for something on the floor? Is this what you're looking for?" After a pregnancy test with 2 clear red lines appeared in her hand, I was stunned. I asked Aurora what this was, and she quietly assisted me up. 2 lines on the pregnancy test indicate that you are pregnant, and I jumped in disbelief, feeling as though I'd tripped on something unexpected, and after giving it some thought I understood that my strategy had already fallen apart, and I thought bitterly, Aurora is pregnant. The following day, I escorted Aurora to a prenatal appointment. Shortly after, we were summoned into the examination room as the findings back to normal. I quickly asked the doctor if it was okay for us to have sex while she's not during the first or final 3. The doctor scowled at me while I was pregnant. I begged the doctor to allow the middle 4 months since I was desperate, but he snapped even. "Even though your wife is gorgeous, she is expecting a child. What in the world are you thinking?" I was relieved yet discouraged, so I resorted to Aurora, pouted, and said, "Oh, I see. Did you hear that it's not safe? We'll settle our score later, but we won't press you."